We're diving in deeper to the Nevada matchup. We're going to talk strengths, weaknesses, a potential make or break. Then we're going to talk about 3 players that the Gophers need to step up in this one. And finally, the season outlook for the Gophers as it currently stands today.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're kicking it off with some more breaking down of this Week 3 Nevada matchup, including 3 players that the Gophers need to step up this week, 3 players that the Gophers need to slow down on the Nevada's opposing team, and also where the Gophers stand in this season. So if you can't get enough Gophers talk, regardless of win or lose, rain or shine, we've got you covered here at Locked On Golden Gophers. Now later today, if you're listening on Friday, we're dropping this Thursday night. So Friday, we're going to have a midday dropping of our prediction show with Tristyn Spann-Ford. You're definitely going to want to tap into that. We had some fun with that one. But today, we got to get into the Nevada Wolfpack, talking about strengths, what they bring as a team, and also some weaknesses as well. So we're going to get into all of that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And if you have any questions, any thoughts, any predictions you want to see us make on future shows for the predictions episode with Tristyn Spann-Ford, definitely please drop them in the comments over on YouTube, and we will be sure to get some of those incorporated moving forward too. But we're going to jump into Nevada, so let's talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, and what have you. Now, when you're looking at this Nevada Wolfpack team, you're talking about strengths. You have a coach who is coming in from a winning program, and they can already feel that culture, that shift starting, and the season has just begun. Now, they've played in Week 0, Week 1, and Week 2. And they've been in every single one of those matchups against a power conference school in SMU of the ACC, and then against 2 quality G5 programs, Troy, who won 11 games last year, and Georgia Southern, who has consistently been going to bowl games for the last few years now. So overall, they hung tight with all of those teams. They really should have won at least 2, but they only came out 1-2 so far. They could have won all 3 games, and that's what's impressive with a new coaching staff, with 24 players out of the transfer portal, and what have you, is the bounce back that this 2-10 team has already been showing in the early stages of this season. So like I said, the coaching, he comes from a winning program. He was in the CFP last year. He has a defensive emphasis, which usually takes a little bit more time to get adjusted and going well in a new program. So you're seeing flashes, but you're not quite seeing the production of the defense. But the offense has been holding its own for them to stay in ball games. Now, you also have a lot of transfers coming in, like I said, and a lot of those transfers are coming from power conference programs, your Texas, your UCLAs, your Boston College, and what have you. So when you have 16 of your 24 players coming in from power conference programs, you at least know that talent is there, the talent from when they were recruits and what have you, and probably the talent even from a production standpoint, but they didn't get enough opportunities to produce. They didn't get enough opportunities to get on the field itself, but were more so running with the depth, the 2s, the 3s, and what have you. So if these guys can get the opportunity and shine, we've seen guys bounce up and bounce back and show out when they finally get an opportunity. A few of these guys even came from Texas with the head coach. So overall, that's definitely a strength, is that they are not your average G5 team. They have a lot of talent coming in with them, and it's already showing itself in the early stages. They also have a quarterback who is returning. Now, his production wasn't great last season, but he knows this program. He has the guys behind him, and it is showing his growth from year to year. Now, with Colorado, he had struggled. He was not very good. Last year, he had shown some of those struggles, but he stayed on the field. He got reps and what have you. And right now, he's playing lights out for this team. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, almost 600 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing, and no interceptions. I mean, the dude is playing really well for them, and hopefully the Gophers can change that. Hopefully the Gophers can frazzle him and make him come back down to earth a little bit. But right now, he is a strength for this team. Now, on top of that, you have 24 transfers coming in. I've already mentioned this, but that means potentially a few different breakouts from guys who just didn't get another opportunity. And we're already seeing some of that come to light. Savion Red, the running back for this team, he's been playing really well. Over 200 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. He is doing well, and they have depth behind him with multiple running backs as well. A power back in Patrick Garwo, 2 touchdowns on the season so far. So overall, you've got some guys that could really step up and maybe be really highly productive college players that just didn't get the chance at their last schools. Now, another thing that plays to their benefit a little bit, but we're starting to get away from that point, is the fact that there wasn't a lot of real film out there on this staff defensively. But Minnesota luckily has 3 games to break down because they played in week 0, week 1, and week 2. So once you get about 3 or 4 games in that season, you stop looking at seasons past and whatnot, and you start breaking down current tendencies. So right now, the Gophers are in a pretty decent spot having 3 games to really break down. I'm sure they'll look at some concepts from Texas, and maybe there's some things that he's been holding back, waiting for more of the power conference programs that they try to play. But overall, I think that the Gophers have some decent amount of film on them now to hopefully be able to game plan effectively, especially against this quarterback, especially to try and find gaps in this defense. So we'll see what happens on that front. But usually when you are in these early stages, that's where some of these upsets can happen because there isn't a lot of film out there on a new coaching staff and a new program and all of that. So that's where you start to hit question marks. Nebraska last year was a good point of that, and Minnesota really came down to the wire with them. But I think that the Gophers overall should be okay in this matchup. Now, I think this is going to be a lot closer of a game than what Vegas is starting to predict right now, but hopefully I'm wrong on that front. Now, when you flip it to the other side, you flip it to the weaknesses, you have a coach who has no head coach experience or certain play calling experience from what I can see. Now, that might not be 100% true, actually. That might be an old note, previous note, so we can scrap that one. But overall, this quarterback has been turnover prone in the past, and we've seen it at Colorado. We've seen it at Nevada last year. And so that is definitely something that, even though he hasn't turned the ball over quite yet, you know that there is the tendency. If you can draw him into maybe one interception, maybe that's where he starts second guessing. Maybe that's where he starts overthinking, and you can bait him into other opportunities. And that's what can really make the Gophers hopefully run away with this one and get towards that Vegas line spread. Now, the spread right now is 17.5 points. That feels really, really big when it comes to Gophers playing FBS opponents. It feels really big. I'm not going to lie to you on that one. But hopefully they can cover. Hopefully they can get there. But I think a weakness for this team has been that the quarterbacks previously have been very turnover prone, but not showing quite now. Now, the offensive coordinator and his play calling opportunities have landed him multiple opportunities to be a offensive coordinator at multiple programs and multiple stops, but he hasn't been able to do enough to sustain at those programs and stay with those programs and keep going. So it begs the question, is he actually good? Is the offensive coordinator enough? Or was he just riding on the coattails of other successful programs and then they've had to make a change because he wasn't up to snuff? I think that could be the case, and that could prove as a weakness for this Nevada team when they get into quality opponents like power conference teams like Minnesota and SMU and what have you. Now, another weakness for this team, I think, is aside from running back, every other position group on the offense feels like a big question mark. Now, they do have 2 wide receivers that each have over 200 yards receiving so far. But again, we're going to find out against a real defense how those players play. Because right now, the Gophers have been far and away a better defense productively so far in the season, and against a better opponent in North Carolina than anyone that this team has played so far. So hopefully this Gophers defense is for real, and it's showing as a top 20 defense right now in the country. If we get through this week, if we get through Iowa week and maybe even Michigan week, and we're still sitting as a top 20 defense, I think it's time to go all in and buy this defense being very high quality. But if we start to see chinks in the armor, if we start to see a little bit of eroding of the defense over these next few weeks, well, then that's where we could maybe start to see some "oh no" or "I told you so" moments starting in this week. So hopefully the Gophers can come to play and really be a stalwart against this offense that still has a bunch of question marks outside of running back. Now, Another weakness potentially, but it hasn't fully shown itself that way so far, is in year one in new systems across the board. It usually takes a few games to really get it going. So is this the part where it finally clicks, or are they still kind of drinking from a fire hose and trying to just do as little mistakes as possible to keep themselves in these games and in the fight? We're going to find that out real quick on the weekend. Now, overall, when you're looking at this game and you're looking at a make or break, I think if Minnesota gets off to a hot start, especially defensively, then this game could get ugly and they could reach that spread cover. But if they take a while to get going, if the offense is stagnant, if it takes too long for the offense to start clicking, what have you, and this team is hanging around by the third quarter, Nevada's in a single score game, I think this could come down to the wire. I think it could be ugly. I think you could be holding your breath. And I think the Gophers ultimately get the win, but it might be the classic roller coaster. Why is this such a dogfight type game that Gophers fans have been too used to over the years as well? Now, this could absolutely be a game where I would see PJ getting creative, especially early on in the first and second quarter, and taking some shots. And if they hit, then hopefully the Gophers are finding some success on the offense. But by the late second quarter, I could see him really leaning into the running game and trying to do everything it can in the second half to ensure that they walk away with a win, rather than continuing to put up points, put up yardage, and spread the offense out across the board. I could see them leaning into the running game by the second half, especially, but into the late second quarter to really play it safe and play it conservatively. Now, we have talked about this before. We mentioned it yesterday as well, but this Nevada team is already far better than the 2-10 slop show that was last year. The new coaching staff is legit, and they have 24 transfers, 16 who are power conference players transferring in. So I think one of the biggest make or breaks for this game, again, for Minnesota, will come down to not allowing turnovers. Do not turn the ball over yourself. Turnovers are what give lower programs lifeblood or spark or what have you, and that's where the belief starts to set in and upsets start to happen. But Minnesota is the best defense that Nevada will have seen so far by a long shot. So the defense is going to be a major factor for Minnesota here. And my three keys are keeping it clean, low missed tackle opportunities, no turnovers, score in the red zone, and what have you. If you do that on defense, especially, and across the board, if you keep it clean in this game, the Gophers should come out with a win. Number two is frazzle the quarterback and get him with looks and pressures that he hasn't seen and force him into errors. And then finally, it's dominating the trenches. If you go out there and your offensive line finally plays true to what it should be, you should be able to run away with this win. Now, for the second straight week, the defense is the key to winning. That said, the Gophers offense, it saw progress last week, and hopefully Minnesota can continue to build on that progress and get a comfortable win in this one. But we're going to talk about three players Minnesota needs to improve in this week's matchup, and three players they have to slow down across the ball coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Factor Meals, because you can fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals and meet your wellness goals thanks to a menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. And Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, no matter how busy you are. You'll always have time to enjoy the nutritious, great tasting meals. Now, you can treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, blackened salmon, and you get to keep your kitchen time to a minimum, which is by far my favorite factor in Factor Meals. Now, Factor Meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, no cleanup. That sounds like a meal for Kane Rob. So overall, you can definitely crush your wellness goals in this upcoming period in this fall with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. And they have 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, so you'll have new flavors to explore every single time. So head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use promo code lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code lockedoncollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 50% off your first box. And not only that, but 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Check out Factor Meals today. Now, on top of that, we got to talk about our friends over at wrong one there. We got to give a little bit of free advertising while you're here, but we're going to talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Now, right now, you've heard about us talk about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook time and time again, but that's because that's just what they are, America's #1 sportsbook. And we'll have a little something different for you now through September 22nd, and that's coming up quick, so you're going to want to take advantage. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, and then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to get every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So you're definitely going to want to take a look at it. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday. This Sunday, 9:15, pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost starts on Thursday, which is today, and you can view your account page now to learn more about your boost. So go to FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook today, and take a swing at the Gophers line and think if they should cover or not. I would say they will not cover in this one. 17.5 points just feels like too much, but you can take advantage over at FanDuel.com. All right, Gophers fans, we're breaking it down. We're talking about 3 players that need to improve in this week's matchup for the Gophers to have success in not only this matchup, but in the long run. The first one I'm going to kick off is Ja Joyner. Now, not only did he not add to his sack total last week, which can happen from time to time. I'm not saying that that is the end-all, be-all, so I'm not stressing on that. But Ja Joyner didn't even see a single pressure in the 23 snaps that he played last week. So we're going to want him to get back on track. He will likely see more snaps in this matchup because it'll probably be a much closer game than what we saw against Rhode Island. But this is a quarterback we're taking on that needs to feel the pressure, and Ja Joyner will be a key factor in that. So he's a player that the Gophers absolutely need to step up in this one. And in order to get to that double-digit sack total that he wants to get to, he needs to basically get 1 sack a game if possible, rather than having multiple sack games. So Ja Joyner needs to step it up for the Gophers this week. Another player that needs to improve in this week is Daniel Jackson. Now, this isn't saying at all that Daniel Jackson has done anything wrong, because he hasn't, but rather we haven't seen a big game from him yet. And he is a player that once he gets hot, he can keep on going. Not only drive, play to play, but from game to game. Now, I think this is also on the offensive coordinator, Greg Harbaugh, though, because you need to get the ball in your players' hands, and you need to scheme the plays to get the ball in their hands early and let them create and let them get confidence and let them get going, because that's how you get your best players going. Look at the NFL. Look at Justin Jefferson here in Minnesota. You get him early touches in the game. You get him quick screens. You get him bubble looks. You get him slants. You get him drags. And all of a sudden, he's finding intermediate routes, deep balls, post routes, and everything throughout the later stages of the game, because he's like, I am that guy, and I can do this, and I've been going, and you can't stop me. Whereas if you don't go his way and you kind of ice him out in the first half, and then you're throwing up deep balls to him in the later stages of the game, it's hit or miss how effective he is in the game, and teams can take him away. But as you get your guys going and you get them those easy looks and you let them create yards after the touch, then all of a sudden they're coming alive and they're like, give me the ball again. Oh, they can't stop me. Oh, this guy can't, he doesn't know what I'm going to do. I'm in his head. I can release off the line this way and he thinks I'm going that way. They start to think of the game in different ways because the juices get going and the confidence gets flowing. But Greg Harbaugh does not do that with his players. And it's not just this year. Daniel Jackson, we need to see more. 5 targets and 6 targets in a game is not enough for him. He needs to be seeing 8 targets a game. If we're throwing the ball 30 plus times, he needs to see at least 8 targets in those 30 throws. And you talk about players last year, Chris Bell, that would have been a great way to get him going. Tristyn Spann-Ford, there were times where all of a sudden we weren't throwing the ball Tristyn Spann-Ford's way until the late 3rd quarter, early 4th quarter, and then all of a sudden he's dropping it or he's not expecting it or things like that. Well, if you're getting him early touches in the early stages of the game, I guarantee you he's flowing, he's ready to go, and he's making big plays in the later stages. So it's not just those 2 years, it's even years prior to that. I can even think of Rashad Bateman in the 2020 season as well, where it's just like, why aren't we getting them generated touches? Plays that are literally designed to get the ball in their hands. We don't see it enough. Greg Harbaugh needs to fix that, and it starts this week, hopefully with Daniel Jackson. Overall, he's been your receiving yards leader and your touchdowns leader for the last 2 years. So He should have a minimum of 8 yards per game. That should be easy to do. We'll see if the Gophers can make it happen. And then the third player that we need to step up this week is Ariante Ursary. Now, the whole offensive line needs to step up, but that should start with your potential early NFL round draft pick. Now, he has a 69.9 pass block grade and a 65.3 run block grade through 2 games. And the run block grade is average. The pass block game is slightly above average, but we need our guy to set the tone and to dominate. And if the O-line dominates in the trenches, you will literally see a massive difference in this offense, in their production. And if you give this quarterback time, if you give these running backs a little room to wiggle, that's when things can maybe start to get a little bit special with this Gophers offense. And it starts with the big boys up front. So we need them to take it to the next level. It can't just be average. It can't just be slightly above average. We need them to play like the stars that people were projecting them to be. And his side of the line, him and Tyler Cooper are the returning 2 starters that haven't switched positions. So it's time for that to show. It's time for that chemistry to develop and continue to shine brightly. And hopefully that starts this week. Now, two or three players the Gophers need to slow down this week. You're looking at the quarterback, Brendan Lewis. We've already talked about him a lot. He's a dual threat. But I think if you can throw a couple packages his way, blitz packages, pressure packages, simulate pressures, I think you can get him on his heels. I think you can get him second guessing and throwing a dangerous ball or two. And once you get an interception or a fumble or something like that, that's where the game can really spin on its heels and take a turn for the worse for Nevada. So he's a guy you definitely got to slow down. Another one to keep an eye on is Savion Red. He came from Texas with his head coach. He is a more of an elusive cutback, but he can get it done any which way. He could be a tail or a workhorse back if you need him to be, but they have a good combination with him and Patrick Garwo. But Savion Red is a player that the Gophers have to prove they can stop the run game. So he's a guy that the Gophers need to have high priority on their radar. And then finally, they got to take a look at Keaton Crawford. I think he's the safety. He's the third on the team in tackles. He also has a PBU on the year, but he is their highest graded defensive player on the season. So that safety is going to need to be tested. We're going to have to take a deep shot or two. We're going to have to get him a little bit lost in the communications or keep things going. I think the quick pass game could be really big to help keep this defense on their heels and keep them not as able to adjust on the fly and having to keep their guys on the field and not substituting packages or rotating players or what have you. But Keaton Crawford is definitely a player to keep in mind and slow down on the season. So those are the 3 players on each side of the thing. Today, we're going to wrap up today's show by talking about the season outlook for this Minnesota Golden Gophers team so far, what it's looking like offense, defense, and special teams, and moving forward. That's what we're talking about coming up next. All right, y'all. Now we got to talk about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. I might have jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals for your job, for the right role, and you want to do it faster and for free. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs is the place to be. Now, anytime I ever look for a job, I'm always looking over at LinkedIn because it's really easy to use. It's really user friendly, and all in your network can share that, or they can tag you in job posts that they think might be a right fit, or if their company's hiring, maybe they bring it up. But overall, I think that LinkedIn Jobs is not only imperative for that front, but for small businesses out there. You need to be on LinkedIn because it's not just a job board. They help you find professionals anywhere that you might not find them anywhere else. Like even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but your role might be open and the perfect role for them, it might come across their timeline and all of a sudden they're considering it. And in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're missing out on a huge potential market to find the right employees. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So you can hire professionals like professionals over on LinkedIn. So definitely take some action today. Post about your job for free over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post about your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gophers fans, we're wrapping this one up, talking about the season outlook for Minnesota so far. So we're going to keep this really brief. We're going to keep it short and sweet to the point. But when you're looking at the defense, I think overall the defense looks like they could be legit. They are putting up production that is top 20, top 25 in the nation. Now, it's only 2 games through the season, so that can shift at any given moment. But if you're looking at the offenses they're going to play and the opportunities that they have in front of them, Nevada, definitely an offense that you could slow down. Iowa is still an offense that is not really generating as much as they would like to, I guess is the words there. Their running back has been legit. Caleb Johnson, I'm a big fan of him. I've talked about that for the past couple of years now, and he's finding his way into real relevancy. But overall, the tight ends haven't been hitting the same. They have a freshman wide receiver who looks pretty good, but their quarterback has just been all over the place, left and right, and they have been struggling in that department. So you could continue to see good defensive production against the offense. And then you've got Michigan, who has been struggling on offense as well. So if you can continue to play at an elite clip and not make mistakes and make your clean tackles and force turnovers and what have you, your defense could still be looking very elite production-wise across the entire nation by the time you hit the halfway point and you go up against a big-time offense in USC. But that also can help you in building your confidence and gaining momentum against some of those Big Ten schools and what have you, and seeing your defense stand strong and steady. That could be a really big confidence booster for this Gophers team. And then you move into a slate on the schedule where you can dominate once again. UCLA, Rutgers, Illinois. Yes, they have some players here and there, but those aren't some offenses that are kicking the doors down. So the Gophers have the opportunity to finish as a top 20 defense this season. The challenge is right there in front of them. And if they continue to clean up the mistakes, I think they can be there in the end. Now, sacks is still needed, but the turnovers are consistently being forced, and they really missed out on a couple of turnovers in each of the last 2 games. So there's still room for growth. Now, young players are making strides on the defense as well, and that might be some of the most important things. Devin Eastern, Anthony Smith, I'm tripping right there. Aiden Gooseby, Coy Parrish, Tyler Stolsky, Zaquan Bryant, Kerry Brown. All of these guys are young players that have multiple years of eligibility left and are seeing good work and playing rather efficiently. So overall, you love to see that. You love to see that growth, that momentum, and hopefully they take more strides into stardom and elite level of play to help this defense really step up into a top 20 tier or top 20 team in the nation when it comes to defense. And then you flip it to the special team side of things. Special teams took a step in the right direction. The first game, they looked absolutely horrid. The second game, they only had 1 missed field goal, but it was from 55. So, I mean, you give and you take. They had 2 made field goals, 47 and 53. Coy Parrish had a 28-yard return, which was very nice to see from the Gophers, and they only had to punt once on the day against Rhode Island. So hopefully you can build on that and keep it going in the right direction, but I think it's still probably middle of the pack, middle of the conference right now, special teams-wise. And then finally, offense. The past game showed promise. We saw that and we got excited by it. You have your difference-making back in Darius Taylor, and you got to see bits of it in both the passing and receiving games last week. And then you have options across the offense, and that was proven where 12 different pass catchers caught a pass in the game last week. So overall, there's options and you're seeing progress, but now you need to prove it against an FBS team, and then you have to start proving it against conference teams. So there are still strides to be made here, and we need to see if it's legit or if it was just the level of opponent, and we're going to find that out at least in a blip this weekend. You also still need to find a way to get the ball into Daniel Jackson's hands more, plain and simple. I've already beat that point to the ground today, but it needs to happen. And then finally, the offensive line still needs to get it together, especially in the run game. So overall, this team looks like it could make a run in some games, in my opinion. Now, it's still up and down how this team could finish. They could finish anywhere from 4 wins to 7 wins. Maybe you can sneak an 8 win in there. I don't know. But overall, it's still up for grabs. I think Iowa is a game you can be competitive in. Rutgers is a game you can be competitive in. Maryland, UCLA, Nevada, all of those feel like they could be wins for Minnesota. Now, if that happens, that means you're at 6 wins right there with the win over Rhode Island. And all of a sudden, you have other games that could be very challenging, but maybe you can steal one against the Illinois or Michigan or Wisconsin. Michigan doesn't look like a team that is going to be a huge threat this season season. Now, that doesn't mean they can't absolutely beat the brakes off Minnesota, but it is a game that maybe if you're clicking, you can go and pull an upset, or you can be in the fight for it at least. So Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin all look very challenging in the early stages of this season. But if you can go and win those other 5 that we just mentioned, you're already sitting at bowl eligibility, and everything else beyond that starts to feel like momentum and program building and what have you. Now, Penn State and UCLA or USC feel like a potential lost cause right now. I don't know if the Gophers can keep up, but overall, I think you're looking at a team that can still be 6-6 on the season. Maybe you can pull off one of those other games and make it a 7-win season. And I would take that. 7 wins in a bowl game right now. I would take that as progress, especially from the down year that we had last year. But hopefully it can be even better. Anything's possible for the Gophers. It all starts with week 3, and hopefully we'll be talking about a dub against the Nevada Wolfpack. But that's going to do it for us on today's show. I thank you for listening. Please leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Until next time, row the boat, Sky, Go Gophers as always, and please don't forget to hit subscribe.